Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast with me, Karen Maloney. I am your host, and the intention of this podcast is to help us open our minds, get curious about ourselves, and to raise our vibration and consciousness levels. Through these conversations, we hope that you will go on an inward journey to discover the truth of who you are and to become aware of your own energy and vibration. We have the power to consciously create our lives, but we need to wake up to this fact before we can begin the process and learn the key of self-responsibility. Check out the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Acast, Castbox, or whatever platform you listen on, and please like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Leave a review, leave a rating, as this will help it to reach more people. Check out my website as well, Soul Power Light, www.soulpowerlight.com. Welcome, beautiful souls, and thank you for joining me for another episode. It is me, Karen Maloney, and thanks as always to everyone who tunes in. I know I say it each week, but there's always new listeners, so thank you so much to each and every one of you. This week I have such an empowering conversation for you today with a global expert, Rhiannon Rees, who I will introduce in a moment. But just before that, I want to remind you about a couple of coaching slots that I have opened up. So if you are looking to build more inner confidence and move from fear into faith, into your inner guidance, trusting yourself and building that relationship and working from your soul and intuition, reach out. Log on to my website, soulpowerlight.com, and book in your free 30-minute discovery call to see if we would be a good fit. Now back to today's guest, who is Rhiannon Rees, and she is a human behavior expert, international high performance coach, and self-development expert, helping CEOs, businesses, elite athletes, coaches, and celebrities to redefine their level of success. An Australian native, Rhiannon is a best-selling author, thriving entrepreneur, and a global speaker. Her personal sufferings led her to search for answers and into a 30-year study of human behavior. Being completely compelled to help others, she has continued to invest in education in the fields of self-development, neuroscience, and business. As a dynamic, results-driven leader, Rhiannon is the founder of Conscious Coaching Collective and has demonstrated success in creating both multi-million-dollar companies and individuals and champions. One of the world's top-seated self-development experts, Rhiannon has worked with the Spice Girls, X-Files, NRL, Grey's Anatomy, and private practice cast members. She is an accomplished expert in her fields, having received numerous awards, and today she is ranked number 6 in Global Gurus, ahead of Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield. And she is a 3-time nominee for Businesswoman of the Year and runner-up as Franchise of the Year. And she has also been voted top 30 Global Gurus for coaching for over 6 years. Oh, what a conversation with Rhiannon. It was such a pleasure to connect with her. And from very early on, she shared some of her story, which she says that she is blessed by tragedy. And I know for a lot of people that may seem like a bizarre concept, but listening to her story and how she went from having a very successful business and marriage and a big staff to losing everything and being homeless for 3 years with her young son, to then how she built everything up again. So it's really, really inspiring. And I love as well how we got deep into soul talk as well, and having that faith and trust in that higher power or higher self, God, universe, or soul, whatever you want to call it. And she shares an experience when that voice spoke to her when she was in India that made her realize and trust that voice all the time. So much information in this conversation, and I love Rhiannon's real down-to-earth, friendly and approachable style. And her common theme throughout everything that she does now is loving kindness and just spreading that loving kindness with everyone. So I think that comes across in her voice. I really love this conversation, loved connecting with her and listening to her story. It really is a testament that there is no such thing as impossible. And even Rhiannon says that. She says there is no such thing as impossible and there is no such thing as a problem. They are just constructs of the mind, and we choose to live that way because we choose not to free ourselves. So super empowering. Check out Rhiannon's website as well, consciouscoaching.coach, to find out more information about her upcoming Business FX course. And also Rhiannon has kindly shared a free copy of her best-selling book, How to Climb Mount Everest in Sandals. So a free copy is available to everyone, and I have that linked from my website soulpowerlight.com. Click the podcast section and click on Rhiannon's show and the direct download link will be there. So pop in some headphones, take a bit of time for yourself, go for a walk, enjoy this conversation and take from it what you will. Welcome to the show, Rhiannon Rees. I'm so excited to connect with you today, all the way from Australia. So first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me from down under and slightly east of Byron Bay. Really happy to join you on your show.
Yeah, it's exciting. And just from our chatting there for a couple of minutes before we started recording, I'm really interested to see where the conversation will go and to hear from so much of your journey and your expertise and your passions and everything and bringing them to our audience. So let's get stuck in. And you are a human behavior expert and an international high performance coach. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background or what led you to this work.
Yeah, great question. I really believe, the journey of the soul through your life actually draws the type of work to your passion, your on purpose work, your soul purpose work. And my life has been, until I was 40, was a series of extreme tragedies and trauma and pain, like, any sort of, really heavy experience in life. I seem to draw that to me. Like, my brother committed suicide. I lost a brother. I found out I had another brother. My stepmother was quite abusive. I lived in foster care. My husband was transgender, and when he came out, I was such a huge shock for me. At that time, I lost my home, my marriage, my business, and my mind all in 3 months. And I ended up being homeless with my son with massive 6-figure debt for about 3 years until I ended up living in a tent on food bank handouts. So my soul has just been carved by suffering. And I believe that you have these choices in life when that happens that are either going to make you or break you. And you make that choice in that moment to either crack your heart wide open or to close it shut forever. And I'm so grateful that I decided to crack it open. And it was a series of events and looking at myself and trying to understand how I'd created this that then catapulted me to this success. Like, 12 years ago, living in a tent on food bank handouts, I could never imagine winning like #1 global business and performance coach or the global visionary of the year. I was just thinking, hey, where's the next meal coming from? So it was incredibly limited. And at the same time, what was happening was underneath the scenes was simmering this drive to never live like that. I had a 1-year-old child who from 1 to 4 was homeless. So that was my I can go to never live in a tent is to be #1, to go to the absolute top, because then I'll never live in a tent, right? Yeah. And so it was sort of became, and off the back of that, because of my suffering, all I want to do is help people. And so that developed this sort of loving kindness, this, this whole philosophy underneath that of what is the soul's journey in life. And I've been blessed by all this tragedy. That's what I can say. I've been blessed by tragedy.
Wow. What an incredible story there, and highlights obviously, but wow. And I love that you say that you've been blessed by tragedy, and that's a huge thing, because and you said something really interesting there as well that I absolutely loved, that I think is really, really important and very difficult for people as well. You ask yourself the question, how did I create this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's huge. So I'd love to talk to that for a little bit as well, because, you know, again, a lot of us, we often play victim role and we prefer to blame. Like, the reality is it's easier to blame. But how did that question help you in, you know, kind of connecting to that inner passion again and that fire to never be in that position again?
Well, I was the classic victim. I was that. Was my mindset. I had victim poverty scarcity mentality, only I didn't even know there was such a thing. I didn't know that existed. And it was sort of that altruistic, you know, doing the best that I can. And I had a very big issue with being financially free because I thought that I didn't really need much and I could survive on very little. It was kind of like that spiritual journey where a lot of people take that journey and believing that, you know, to be pious and to be on that path that you need to be poor, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world, because we need to be abundant in all realms. And what I realized, and this may or may not go, you know, however your listeners see this, I'm just interested in telling my truth. Like, everyone's journey is their journey. So there's no judgment here on anyone's journey. But my journey was, I believe that my soul came to earth, and I was such a precocious soul. I said to universe, you give me everything you've got and I'll be able to handle it, and I'm sure I said that, which is like the thing that you could say. And so, of course, I always chose the hardest path because I believed that the hardest path was better for my journey, would, you know, to overcome something or to work harder for it. You know, you grow up and your parents tell you work hard and you'll end up having a great life. Well, I think my soul came to earth going, work hard, overcome something big, and, you know, this will be great. And what I realized is, why can't you take the easy path? You know, what about path? What, you know, why value the easy path less because it's easy? Why not decide that the easy path can give you more time? You know, you don't have to follow a path that creates more suffering and more pain or is harder. That's not more beneficial. That doesn't create more significance for you. But so many of us, especially say in the farming community, they work like 20 hours a day every day. Work hard if you're a farmer. Well, why can't you work easy if you're a farmer? So I really questioned my mindset. And once I realized, when I first understood that victim poverty scarcity mindset, I absolutely rejected it. I went, that is so not me. That's so not me. But what I was doing was denying the truth. The truth was I had and was that victim poverty scarcity. And I can tell you where I was the second that I decided that it was my truth. And from
I'd love to know. Even that was something I'm like, when did this, you know, insight and this clarity come? Like, were you still homeless? Had you read any books? Like, or was it just like an epiphany moment? Or
Yes. So I had been homeless, and at the, you know, we did 40 house sits over 3 years. And so I was so tired of asking for house sits that at the end of that, I just asked my girlfriend, look, just give me a tent. Can I just borrow your tent? Because at least I can put it up and take it down and I don't have to ask for another house sit. But at that point, I was at the lowest of the lowest of the low. Like, there was, you know, on food bank handouts, there was nothing left. And I used to pray to God every day, please, God, like, help me figure this out. Like, how do I work around this? Like, I went to university. Like, how have I ended up homeless, you know? And I really felt sort of forsaken by God, if you like, because like, nothing changing. But what I didn't realize was I had to be the change. I had to dig deep and be the change. And isn't it interesting that you may not do it for yourself, but the second that you have a bigger reason to do it, then you'll do it straight away. So what happened was, I'm one of 8 children, and my mum called me. She was living in Australia and I was in Canada at the time, and because my ex-husband's Canadian, and she told me that she was very ill. And I thought to myself, and my mum's never said that in my entire life, I thought, if my mum dies because I can't figure a way out of this tent and this poverty lifestyle, I'll never forgive myself. So within 4 days, I called all my friends. I got points. I got money. I ended up back in Australia. But when I came back to Australia to look after my mum, she too was in a really bad situation. So she's living in housing commission in a 1-bedroom unit. So it's a disaster all round. So what happened was, I started to look after my mum, and then she got better over about 6 months. She actually got better. And then I was forced to look at myself. Okay, now that my mum's better, what am I going to do? And I had run into this girl. You know how universe works in mysterious ways. You're getting little hints all the time of the
Yeah.
path to your own happiness and greatness, and often we just miss it because we're so
Mm-hmm.
dedicated to this journey of suffering, or this path that we think ego thinks is the right path, which is completely, absolutely not the path we want to take. So I met this lady, and she had said to me, she said, you would be a great coach. And I went, what's a coach? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
basketball. No, a business coach. I'm like, because I had a business with 35 staff, and I was involved in health and wellness, and I had a doctor that was trained by Deepak Chopra on my team. So I was very much into this business that failed. And when she said business coach, I remember this tiny little light going off, going, God, a business coach, wouldn't that be great? But I had 35 staff. I was married to a Canadian. She was in Australia. I had a 1-year-old child. I'm like, how's that ever going to happen? But isn't
Mm-hmm.
it fun? The second that you ask universe how that is going to happen, like, sure, it didn't happen then, but 3 years later, I ended up being in Sydney, and she was in Sydney, and she came to mind, and I thought, I'm just going to give her a call. So I called her, and she said, okay, here's the deal. If you want to do the training, because it was the number one business coaching firm in the world, then it's $35,000 for 10 days. That was 7 years worth of my income, because I had $500 a month for 12 years. And I'm just like, I'm wearing my mum's clothes to work. Like, I had nothing. I absolutely had nothing. So I'm like, oh my God, how can I raise that? And I had 6 weeks to raise it. Well, it's so interesting, because if you really want anything, there's no such thing as a problem. We're just under-resourced. We just cannot find the creative thought to solve that problem. So what made sense at the time was to get a job. Just get a job where you get a regular paycheck so you can sort out this mess. But that little tiny inner voice, my soul, was saying to me, no, you need to do the coaching. I'm like, how am I going to make the money happen? But that little voice was so persistent. The inner me, the inner knowing, the essence, my soul was saying, you need to do the coaching. So I just went, okay, I'm going to do the coaching. I have no idea how I'm going to raise this money. But I decided that I didn't want to live the life that I was living. And so if this coaching was going to be a path, then God damn, that better work. So I started going to banks asking for money, and they laughed in my face going, you don't even have a job. You don't even have a proper address. You've only been there for like a few months. So they kept laughing in my face, and every single bank told me over and over and over and over, no, we're not giving you a loan. Do you think that stopped me? Absolutely not. I just kept going back. I kept getting a no's, because you know what? Every time you get a no, you're one step closer to getting a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this situation in the bank where I was sitting in between these two offices, and they were glass offices. And I was looking at the lady that I always got that always told me no. And I looked at the other office right beside it, and I thought to myself, I wonder if I get her. And I got her, and the other girl, I'd never seen her before. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to ask her for a loan, because I already know the answer to the question. I'm going to ask her how to get a loan. So, and it was an entirely different question. So I was madly taking notes: how to get a loan, how to get a loan, how to get a loan. So in little tiny increments, I made that money happen on the very day that it was due. I started out with small credit cards. Friends gave me money. I borrowed for the flight. Even when I got to Vegas to do the training, they had little chips on the table for the, roulette and stuff, and the guys were playing, because we'd be working till like 11 o'clock at night. So they'd go down and do, play roulette or blackjack or whatever, and they were winning. So they'd like toss me a chip. Well, I was living off those chips, right? So I want to go back and answer the question you asked. You said, what was the turning point? Well, I remember when I started coaching, when I raised that money and I started coaching, and my coach had said to me, you have a poverty victim scarcity mindset. I couldn't let that go. I kept grappling with it, going, what does she mean? I know I don't have that, because she kept saying, you put your son in the tent. And I'm like, no, my husband was transgender. I lost my business. I kept, no, I didn't. But the second that I owned that, yes, I did, I put my son in the tent, that was the second I moved off from that poverty victim scarcity mindset, and I started to embrace an abundance, wealth, and expansion mindset. That is, the second that I embraced that, I was on a walk in the park, living in that 1-bedroom housing commission unit, and I went, it's true what she said. And that's where it started to change, that moment.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that as well. I swear, at one stage I had like kind of tear out the corner of my eye. I was like, oh, this is like just so empowering and so incredible. And, you know, you're just a testament, and you sharing your story of, you know, the power of our mindset and beliefs, and how anything is possible when we connect to that soul voice, like you said, when we listen to those nudges, despite, you know, it's getting out of the head and the stories going, there's no way you can raise 35,000 in 6 weeks. Like, you're insane, you're mental, you're crazy. Like, the universe is always conspiring to help us when we make the decision. But like you said, you have to decide in the first place. We all have to take ownership in the first place and move from that lack or limiting beliefs or that victimhood role in order for something new to enter, and that new energy and that new life force. So I just loved everything about your story there now as well, and thank you so much for sharing it. And I think it's a really important area to maybe delve into a little bit, is the whole money mindset, because money is such a huge thing for everyone. You know, everyone grows up with money doesn't grow on trees or whatever kind of stories around it, and have all these limiting beliefs. So how do you help clients in that to shift, you know, into an abundance mindset like you mentioned?
Well, that's a great question. So everyone has a charge around money, and it's been you've been brought up, money doesn't grow on trees, you have to work hard for your money, you know, and so people have this charge around money that the second that you have a financial conversation, you're in a realm that's predetermined by their childhood and by what their parents told them and their teachers, and, you know, all of the people that they live in. And also too, they need to belong to a community. So to belong, then you have a certain amount of money and all of that. And you have to break all of these things down, and you have to be okay to have the money that you deserve. Like, it's a massive thing. Like, I remember walking through a mansion one day and it made me feel really weird. And I'm like, I noticed later when I became a coach, I went, that's because I didn't think I was good enough, or I didn't deserve, or, you know, whatever it was. Whereas now, I walk through a beautiful place, I just go, hey, it's beautiful, because I don't have the charge on it. So I'm going to give you two examples of how I help people. The first one is actually an example in my own life, is when I first made that money happen to go on that course. That was so huge to make that happen. I went, oh my God, wow, I actually made that happen. Like, you know, from a housing commission, not having a job, on, you know, on Centrelink, which is equivalent to UI, like government funding, to make that actually happen. That's 7 years worth of my income, and I made it happen. My next question was, well, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And like, you know, 5 years later, I bought a massive property, and that was I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but that was a similar thing. It was a huge thing to actually make that all happen. And I thought to myself, I'm gaining a skill set and creating abundance. Like, every time I do this and I manifest this sort of money, I'm creating this skill set. So then I decided to give myself a challenge. I thought to myself, how fast could I create a house deposit if I wanted to buy a property? So I went to the bank and I said, well, can I buy another property? And they said yes. And they told me the date that I needed the deposit, you know, and it was a very sizable deposit. And I thought, I'm not even going to try to get it until the day that it's due, because I set myself a challenge, like, what if I could? So I woke up on that day, and I knew the money had to be in the bank at 3:00. And I thought, well, I'll have a look at it at 11. And I just decided I'd figure out 10 ways to do it. Like, what 10 ways could I make that deposit happen if I had to? And it was just a 5-minute exercise for myself. Well, the truth is, I had that money in 5 minutes because the first way came up with worked. So what we're doing is we are so weighed down and burdened by all these charges that we choose the culture and the learning and the imprint of all those lessons around money. You know, you've got to work hard for your money, and you can't make much money, and we're struggling, and we're poor middle class or whatever. You take on and you wear that in your life, and so you reject anything else because this is now tied into your identity. So the other example I want to give you is my farmers. So farmers, I've had a lot of farming clients, and you usually have a lot of debt. You know, they have rain or drought, their crops are wiped out, so they have, you know, overnight they can lose millions of dollars in a drought or a flood or a fire, or something happens, they lose millions of dollars. So their mindset is always, I don't have any money, we're losing money, we have so much debt, what are we going to do? So they don't have a mindset that says we can make money, that it's okay to be rich. They just do. And the other thing is too, they're repulsed by it. So they think rich people. So I had these farmers who the bank was taking back their property. They were $6 million in debt. They had to borrow the money for the flight to see me, and their whole conversation for 5 hours was how much debt they had, how much money they owed, and the burden of all this debt. And at the end of 5 hours, I said to them, "And do you have any children?" And they said, yeah, we've got 3 kids. I'm like, isn't that funny? You've not mentioned your children at all. You've just talked about this burden of the debt. So I said to them, the problem that you have is you love debt. You love all this debt that you have, love all this poverty. And they said, you haven't heard anything we've said. And I said, I've heard everything that you said, but you won't allow yourself to be rich. I said, tell me about rich people. And the husband went, rich people, what a bunch of beep. I just edited that for myself. And the rich people, we don't know any rich people. And I said, okay, so your first exercise will be go and have a cup of tea with the richest women in your town. And she's like, absolutely not. I said, well, I don't coach you until you do. Because if you can't put yourself in that environment, and I said, go with an open mind. She goes, they're not even nice. So she did. She went and had a cup of tea with 3 of those women, and she came back to me and I said, what do you think? She goes, well, one of them's kind of nice. And I mean, that is, you're prejudging all of this. And unless you come yourself and conquer your limiting beliefs around money and around abundance and expansion, you're going to stay where you're at.
Yeah, it's so true. And there is, there's just so much in that topic alone, but like you
said, I could go on for weeks on that one. And I mean, obviously that's what I'm creating. I'm creating cash for people, that all over and over I'm creating cash for people. And now what I've realized is I need to help them create passive income so their money makes their money, so that they don't have to work hard. They make good money, but now let's make your money. So I'm more delving into that in different ways now.
Amazing. Yeah. Again, it comes to, I suppose it's also connected to the power of the subconscious mind, and, helping people. Well, maybe talk a little bit about the subconscious mind. I'm sure a lot of people don't even know fully what it is. They've heard the word, but they don't know the power that it holds and how, everything is held in that place. And to access that and to make change is huge as well.
Well, that's the whole area that I work in. So I'll cover a little bit of science around the subconscious mind. So the first thing is the subconscious mind processes 20 million pieces of information per second, which is massive, right? And the conscious mind processes 40. So where do you want to hang out? You want to hang out in the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind. How do you access the subconscious mind? Adler, Jung, and Freud talked about the subconscious mind, the self-limiting beliefs being created around the ages of 5, 6, 7, and 8. So the subconscious mind, the reticular activating system, is a child. It doesn't know if it's real or not. So basically, in a nutshell, whatever you feed that subconscious mind, the subconscious mind will then look into your environment, into your life, and try and bring it to you. So an example of that is if you think dogs are, might not be nice, then your subconscious mind is going to look for a dog that's not nice and go, well, you're right, there's a dog that's not nice. And you're going to go, oh, there's another mean dog, So you've got to be really, you've got to feed your subconscious mind the things that you want in your life, and your subconscious mind will show it up. Like another example, at the Bernstein Clinic, they were able to hook up a person to a computer, and they could test out how the subconscious mind works against the conscious mind. And they were asking them very simple questions like, what is your name? Well, the conscious mind can answer that question under a second. That's really fast. The subconscious mind is answering that question before the question's even asked. Mm-hmm. Now, this tells us we are already all-knowing. We are already all-knowing, all-powerful. You just need to tap into that. I could go on and on and on with that too, but I know you have more questions.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting topic as well, that whole area. And, that's a huge passion of mine. And I suppose, maybe it ties into something you mentioned earlier as well, the loving kindness. And, yes. What for you are some of the practices that help you to really harness and tap into your subconscious mind?
Well, the most important thing is that you stay in a vulnerable state, and in a state where your heart is open and you receive information in your world without judgment. So when you receive whatever it is, like someone says something's bad, well, it may not necessarily be bad. It may just be it's not complete yet, or you don't know the other side of the story. It's about staying in a place of what if or what else, rather than, oh my God, you don't want to jump on any bandwagons, because, look at the situation in the world right now. Like how many people have jumped on bandwagons, whereas away the fear and we looked at it and we took away the fear and the greed and the power that's, the shifting agendas, which we all know that they're there. We're just not exactly sure how that works. But if we took that away and we operated from a place of loving kindness, the world would be entirely different. Like the practices that I adopt is, my meditation, the way I speak, that I'm very brave with my language. Like if I want to say to someone I love them, I just say it. If I want to say something that will cause, quite often I'll post things in my social media that cause, that are controversial, and I'll get a lot of flack in my social media, but I'm okay to say it because I'm just raising a conversation and I have no judgment around what people put out there, because all I want to do is extend that conversation, and because you want to be intrigued and find the curiosity to find the answers. So loving kindness is, I think it's so important to live from that space, because it's a state of expansion. It's a state of abundance, and it's really easy to be kind. It's really easy to be kind, and at the end of the day, I'd rather be remembered for my kindness than the fact that I was a great coach.
Yeah.
Really, because I think kindness, this world needs so much more kindness right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And especially now in the times that we're going through, like you mentioned, people are just jumping on bandwagons, and it's really opened up my eyes again to how people just accept and are spoon-fed everything. And I know from a very young age, I've always been very curious and inquisitive, asking even my parents, going, but why? Why do I have to, follow this path? Or why? I remember I had a huge issue with our final exams in secondary school before going to university, the Leaving Cert. And I used to just talk to my parents. I'm like, I'll do them, but I don't understand how and why what I write in a piece of paper in a certain time space that someone's going to correct can dedicate what me, the person, can and can't do with my life. Because it was done on a point system, and then your points determined what career you could go for. And it just baffled me completely, 100%. And I think we're all just kind of funneled, and I think now is the time for us to come back to listening to our own soul voice again, like you mentioned earlier, and not being afraid to question and wonder, because what I've learned as well is everyone's just figuring it out.
That's it. That's exactly right. Like my son, when he was 13 years old in grade 8, so he's in his second year of high school, and there's still like 5 more years of high school, he says to me, Mum, I don't want to do school anymore. I want to be homeschooled. And I travel all over the world, right? So I'm always on a plane doing, well, not now, but I was prior to Corona. I was speaking all over the world. And so I'm like, oh my God, my son wants to be homeschooled. How am I going to do this? But I want him to follow his path. Like I am brave enough to, and I trust my son that if he says this isn't my path, well, it's not his path. So of course I put him out of school and I homeschooled him. And I'll tell you what, I was the worst homeschool teacher ever. I was knocking on his door every day going, what are you doing? What assignment? What are you studying? Because I was thinking about what was actually happening. And I thought is I'm going to let him do it because he believes this is his path. And how I saw it was, well, if he does really badly this year because I'm a poor homeschool teacher, then we'll just repeat the year and start again. Well, do you know what happened? The fact that I pulled him out of school and let him do his path, because he had been begging me to homeschool him for 8 years, and I said, no, absolutely not. I can't. That will never happen. And finally, after, so long, and he was in that, I went, you know what, it's the one thing he's asked for, just give it to him. And I look back and I go, I should have trusted him, that he knew himself well enough that was always his path. So we did the disaster year of homeschooling. And after that, he said to me, Mum, I think I'm going to go to TAFE University, but he's only 14. So how am I going to get him into TAFE? And I got a homeschool educator, and she goes, well, you can actually get him in this special, program that's just been around for like 2 years. And so I went to TAFE, and they go, there's no way you can get him in because of blah, 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 blah. You can't. He's not old enough. He's not qualified, all of that. And I said, well, have you looked at this program that my homeschool educator told me about? Like, I hired this. And the lady didn't even know about it. And she goes, oh my God. So he actually got in. So he was 14 and the next person in the class was 30 and the oldest was 60. And you know what? He has just flourished. And I went, he already knew what path he needed to take. I just needed, as a parent, to trust him that this was the right path. And when I took him out, all my friends go, oh my God, homeschool, like you've lost your way. My son is now just turned 16. He's done 2 years of tertiary education. He's in the IT module. He is happy as a clam. His friends are all 30 plus and like, oh my God, he's found himself. And I'm like, all I had to do was listen to him and trust myself and not go with the flow, which is he must go to high school and he must get the certificate and then he can blah, blah, blah. No, I want my son to be happy. But how many parents or adults think they have to follow that program? We have to follow our soul's program, not the program that's dished out to us.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that as well, that, you know, you're human as well. You still, even with all the work that you do, that you still have these moments of, no, it needs to be this way and this is the path. But then you catch yourself and you tune in and you're like, okay, look, this is what he's asking. I need to trust this in him as well. And that's really, really powerful. And only now I can understand and appreciate, because, oh my God, when I look back, my dad didn't really get it, but my mother, she always 100% allowed me to be me and make my own decisions. She never gave out or anything. And now I can fully appreciate how difficult that is. She always trusted me and my own intuition. And that has been one of the greatest gifts of my life, because even though I knew I had this call or this pang, I still have that critic mind. I was like, what the hell are you doing? This is bad. Like, why are you doing the total opposite to everyone else, you know? But that's so crucial to have that buy-in as well while we're discovering ourselves. So because you mentioned soul voice and, you know, those nudges and everything and that inner calling and path that we all have, and because it's an area that you're interested in as well, in kind of loving kindness and, you know, comes down to kind of energy and all that as well. How, because again, it takes us all to build that trust in that voice within ourselves. So what has helped you to build that trust, or how do you help people as well to build that trust in themselves?
I love this question. In the beginning, when you start to tap into energy and your soul's purpose, it's like, you know, you're in this sort of massive landscape and you don't have a map. You're like, I don't even know how this works. And, you know,
never have a map.
Yeah, no, never have a map, right? Never have a map. And the thing is too, it's like, okay, well, do I do a bit of meditation, or what do I do? And I think the most important thing is you have to have a level of self-awareness, like what makes you happy, what choices are you making that guide you, that bring you happiness or expansion or that stretch your soul. Like you actually have to know yourself enough to know, rather than be just an automaton that's just going to work 9 to 5, you actually have to go, what could I do with my life? How could I live with my life? That sort of thing. And what happened to me is I've always been on that energetic spiritual journey. My soul, the journey of my soul has always been a really important part of my journey. And, you know, like everyone else, I was kind of stumbling through life going, well, how does this work and blah, blah, blah. But what actually happened was I tuned into certain moments in my life that gave me great faith. Like, you know, on the training course, when I did the coaching course, they told me I was the most inspirational person at the end of the 2 weeks. Well, I hung on to that word inspirational and I created my future from that. But when I was in India, for 6 months 20 years ago, because I was training to be a homeopath. And they had the worst earthquake that they had had in 150 years. And in the little tiny town that I was in, I was very, very sick. And I heard this voice, and this voice said to me, you need to leave. And it was like 8 o'clock at night, and I'm by myself. I'm a single white female. The last thing you do is get on a train or a bus at night. Like, that is just absolutely just not doing that. And so I heard this voice that said I had to leave. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that's not happening. And then sort of half an hour later, I heard the voice again. It said, you need to leave. I'm like, not happening. And then it kind of thundered through my body, and it's like, you're leaving. I'm like, all right. Like, and it's the dumbest idea I would have had, is I have to leave. So I packed everything up. I couldn't even carry my backpack. That's how sick I was. The guy that was running the little hostel that I was staying at, I asked him if he would take me to the train station. So he carried my backpack, took me to the train station. All the trains and buses were full. So we were about to get back into the car to go back to the hostel, and he saw this guy who was a friend of his that had a bus. And he was arguing with him in Hindi, like, she wants to go somewhere and you have a bus, and he's, you know, saying his bus is full or whatever. And finally, you know, I mean, I don't understand Hindi. This is what the guy told me. And then finally he said, well, he said that you can take a seat. So I said, oh, okay. So I went over to this bus. I didn't even know where I'm going. So I went over to the bus, and the bus was packed. Like, there's all people sitting on little tins down the aisle and people hanging off the roof of the buses. You know how they look.
Yeah.
And the guy says, choose a seat. And so I just looked at this man and I said, can I have your seat? And he got off the bus and I got on the bus. So that man stayed in that village and I left. So what happened was we drove about 8 hours north to Rajasthan. And when I got off the bus, it was about 2 minutes off the bus, the earthquake hit. And it was the most massive earthquake, and I could smell that metallic smell, and the ground was shaking and the buildings were coming down. And I thought to myself, oh God, like if the earth opens up, I'm dead. Like for whatever reason, I thought I wasn't worried about buildings falling down. They were falling down. I was worried about the earth opening up and being swallowed by the earth. I'm like, God, if the earth opens up, I'm gone. Like, please don't open up the earth. And it lasted, like, it felt like, 20 minutes, but it was probably only a few minutes. But what actually happened was, everyone was stressed out and it was chaos. And as you can imagine, like, you've seen those visuals before. Mm-hmm. But about a day later, I was able to go into the city, and there was, in a tiny little sort of cafe that was still standing, was a tiny little TV that was about 6 inches wide by 3 inches high, like one of those tiny little TVs. And I was able to pick up from the story that the town that I had just come from was the epicenter of the quake. And it was completely wiped out, and their guess was about 16,000 people had died. And I was like, oh my God, like the whole thing about them telling me this voice, this, inner intelligence telling me to leave, and that man stayed in that place. And I got that was one of the most massively life-changing experiences I could have ever had, because it solidified my faith in this consciousness, this divine, this God, whatever you call it, this consciousness that we live in, within and without. It solidified my faith in that. Like, I knew from that moment on that was true, and that was a guiding force in my life, and that was helping me to experience my soul journey here on the planet, and that it wouldn't matter if anyone told me I was wrong or I was crazy, that was my path, because I had that experience and it had saved my life. And so I made a sort of a promise that if I ever heard that voice, or that I was working with that divine consciousness, that whatever they wanted me to do, I would do, because I felt like my life had been spared. So I ended up going back to the epicenter to help out in the quake, and I was way not prepared for that. And after that, like, I was in so much shock, like half my hair fell out because of the shock of what I saw. I'm not trained in any of that sort of thing. So I've had these sort of experiences which have shown to me that we live in a divine energy, a divine consciousness, which is trying to constantly show up our evolution. And what I can say is, for what I've learned, the closest thing is like that movie Avatar. We're all fully connected. What lies in you, Karen, your heart and soul, is the exact same inside me. I just dress it up differently. I put a Rhiannon on it, and you put an Irish accent on it. But what actually resides in your heart and soul, the essence in your heart and soul, is the same. It's identical. So how can you then not move through your life with anything other than loving kindness? Because what I do to you, I do to myself. So I want to extend loving kindness, because what I do to you, I'm doing to myself. It's absolutely key.
Oh yeah, it so is. And but it's often, the unfortunate thing is, sometimes I think it takes an experience like that, not maybe to that level, that's very, very extreme, for a person to really honor and know and nourish and nurture that trust and follow that path. And like you say, when you have an experience like that, like, oh my God, like you just mentioned, that essence, you see the exact same, that energy, that vibration that runs through us all, that is core, that is source, that is whatever you want to call it, but it is essentially the same in every single one of us. And like you just mentioned, how it's dressed up differently on the outside, they're all just constructs, but the essence, the real true center and core of our beings are the same. And when we connect to that place, it's magic, because like you say, how can you be anything but full of love and kindness for another? Because like you say, it's us.
In this time of corona and the economy collapsing, that's actually where we all need to reside, is in that place of loving kindness and let the fear dissolve, and look for a new path, because most people are so afraid of the unknown and the uncertainty. Well, guess what? Life is uncertainty.
Yeah.
So make that your friend. We want to go into that place, because the most amount of millionaires came out of the Great Depression when there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. Well, we are in a time right now where we are going to see some of the greatest wealth transfer in history because of opportunity that most people can't see. So you have to find the problem that other people can't see, solve that problem, and your world will be massively different.
Absolutely. And I loved what you said earlier about staying in that vulnerable state and having your heart open, because again, it makes logical and rational sense of, oh, I'm going to shut myself down and put up these walls around my heart to protect myself because I don't want to get hurt. But actually what I've learned as well is, no, we're here to experience it all. And the more that we open ourselves up and can allow ourselves to feel, well, we help transmute those energies. That's the only way they can be transformed, is through our body, our vessel. We are a channel, and we have to feel everything. And actually, when we allow ourselves to feel, as a person who was very afraid to feel for a long time, when we allow ourselves to feel, it actually dissipates. We can move through things much quicker. Whereas when we shut down and suppress and block, actually that's when things build and manifest, and then they become this massive big thing.
That's exactly right. Music to my ears, what you just said. I'd like to add a little bit to that as well, is that I feel the best way to stay in that vulnerable state of loving kindness and to open your heart is to risk yourself every day. Risk yourself. And when I mean risk yourself, I mean risk that, yes, you might get hurt, and you could actually be loved, though. Like putting up wall is not going to stop the hurt. It's just going to confine your experience of life. Whereas if you risk yourself every day and put yourself out there and don't have any judgment on what comes back to you, because it's all just experience, right? Then you can maintain that state of loving kindness. Like, I risk myself every day because I don't care. I just want to put myself out there with loving kindness, and however anyone perceives it, it's on them. 20 someone had said they thought I wasn't a very nice person, I would be so upset. Whereas now they said, you're not a nice person, my first question would be, well, what is it that I have done that makes you think that? And if I can fix it, I'll fix it. And if I can't, I won't. Like if they say, well, you're late or you're too loud or whatever it is, I will try to fix that. And if not, if they say, well, I don't like you wearing black, well, I'm going to wear black. You know what I mean? So I would look at that to whatever the judgment is, can I use that to improve my world? Like if we all let go a little and not take it all so seriously and just ask, whatever the universe is showing up, can we use that to create a better world for ourselves? Because it's just mirroring your inner soul. It's just mirroring that. Then your life will be entirely different. But I like the concept of risking yourself every day, because then you're living. Most people live a life that's anesthetized because they're so walled up and protected just in case. They're not actually living. Get to the end of their life, they're already dead. Their whole life was dead.
Yeah. And that's a really sad fact, but again, it's each to their own as well, I say sometimes, because sometimes, you just get so overwhelmed, and, sometimes I feel like if I had a magic wand or could bat people across the head to kind of wake them up a bit, but then I'm like, okay, this is when I need to breathe and come back to my center, because I have to honor each person's soul journey as well. And just because, I have this idea that, of how things should be, or these lessons or learnings, every person's soul wakes up when it's their time as well. And, there's always a perfect divine order to everything, no matter how chaotic and, mayhem it looks like. And exactly like what we're going through now as well. And what you say, like, this is one of the greatest shifts that we will ever witness in our lifetime. And like you mentioned as well, that self-awareness and knowing ourselves, like truly knowing ourselves and sitting into our own truth and our essence and our core and our integrity and working from that place is what is going to help us all to bring this new earth into being.
That's it. And the other thing is too, I think that, once you embrace it, and I love that you said, not everyone's going to wake up. That's exactly right. And not everyone's going to, because it's not their path, not in this lifetime. time. That's not going to happen. But other people are going to wake up. And I think the thing is, once you start to use these concepts and live from this space, you can have a much bigger dream. You can, because it allows you to dream so much bigger. And the thing that we often do is we keep our dreams small because they're tied in with that whole money consciousness and stuff, that we make it logical and sequential and small, because then we think we'll actually achieve it. But we are actually far greater than that, and it doesn't take more effort. It's just like, set your dreams pie in the sky. Like if you had a magic fairy wand and you could live any life, just decide that's what you want. Because I tell you what, if you got halfway there, you wouldn't be disappointed. Yeah. But if you set your dreams so low that you actually achieve them, then you'll never know who you truly are, because your soul will never have stretched that far. So I set I created 2 years ago, I created a list of things, because I'm constantly stretching myself. But what I'm stretching is my soul. Like, what if I could is my question. Like, so I like play in the world, So 2 years ago I decided, well, how else can I stretch my soul? I'll create this list of what is absolutely impossible for me to achieve. And I put about 20 things on there, like this is impossible for me to achieve, these things. Well, by the time the first thing happened, I went, well, the rest of the list is looking at itself. Well, by the time the second thing happened, I just took the whole list down and I went, there is no such thing as impossible. It's just constructs of the mind. There is no such thing as a problem. It's just constructs of the mind. Like, you choose to live that way because you choose not to free yourself, really and truly, because any problem can be solved.
Oh, so powerful. Yes. And I know my journey as well. I was like, oh my God, I was my own imprisoner, but also I was my own liberator. It was all me, all down to me. And like you say,
everyone.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Like you say, it is all just constructs. The only limits are the limits we put on ourselves in our mind. And that's why it's so important that we move beyond, that we don't live from our mind, that we dream of something bigger, because there is nothing limited about the universe. Absolutely nothing. Right. It's infinite.
1,000%. Like, I have recently taken on a new philosophy. So this is something new that I'm trying out, and it's a little akin to a book called The Dice Man, which is a very old book, but I'm not in a position to share it entirely, because I think that if I share it and I don't share the message correctly at the moment, because it's a new thing that I'm working on, that people think, oh, well, she's just copping out and she's just let go. And it's actually not that. It's that I'm so trusting in my soul path that I've let go to an extent that I'm stepping back in my life, whereas I've spent my whole life stepping forward. So it's very different for me to actually step back and go, okay, well, now what, in a different way, because I'm always taking the lead. And it's more for me to have a different experience and see what happens when I do this, because, again, I'm about stretching my soul. Well, I've never done this before, because, even my son says, you're like a steam train, Mum. You just go after all your stops. And he says, I'm more like an electric train. My stops come to me. And I went, so interesting. So I've taken a step back to see how things unfold in a different light. And what I can say is I feel so much serenity doing this, because it takes zero effort. Because it's just because I'm being as opposed to doing, because the more I be who I am, then my world will manifest regardless of the effort I put in, because my energy, my vibration says this is how it is, and I will draw that to me like a magnet. And so I'm even focusing more on that by letting go, by just and it is a place of bliss for sure. But if I don't describe it in the right way, people would think you're complacent, like she's not doing anything. She's just sitting on the benches, which actually I'm doing a lot. I just don't look like I'm doing a lot.
Yeah, well, I always say as well, the real work, the work now, I consider the real work is, my daily practice is being in touch with my energy, harnessing that, noticing that. So then, because like that, life is always supporting us. There are always nudges and signs. But if I'm so, focused on one path or area or way of being in particular, well, then I can miss the signs. So when we do take our foot off the gas a little bit as well, we can allow what's meant to show up as well. But like that's I totally get that. It's not a place of just sitting on your ass and doing nothing. There's still a lot of work involved.
And you just touch on it too. You have your daily practice. I have my daily consciousness, and I've been doing them for 20 years. And I make sure every single day I do these daily consciousness practices to keep my mind and myself on my champion focus, which is the best of me. And there are things like meditation and yoga and doing gratitudes and I ams and affirmations and visualization. Like these are the same as brushing my teeth. This is how I stay on focus. And people go, well, doesn't it get boring? You're doing the same thing. Well, no, I'm constantly deepening a practice. I'm deepening my relationship with me, which deepens my relationship with my life, how I impact the world.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's a beautiful, it takes a practice, but then, you experience something else. It's like this grace, this other energy running through. I know for me that it's like, oh, wow, that there's no way I would stop for all the money in the world, that practice, because it's magic. So many other questions that we never got to, and that's absolutely fine. Time has just flown away. But I've thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. And before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to mention or anything you're working on at the moment, or any last messages before we part ways?
Well, if anyone would like to join my online program, I've got a program. It's called Business FX, but it's really about harnessing that inner power to create a life or business of your dreams. So it's about conquering yourself. So all of these practices we've talked on this podcast, I've put it into a 10-week program. So you can come and join that with me. What I would say is, live each day as if it was your last day and treasure time more than anything, because at the end of the day, you've got your family, your friends, and your faith and your relationship with you. And if you haven't dived into that and really devoted yourself to that, then what else is there? So I let go of fear. It's not real. It's just uncertain, and we'll make uncertainty our friend, and then you'll really live, and your life will change because of that. So I would just say live every moment, because the only thing we can't get more of is time.
Yeah, I love that as well. Make uncertainty our friend. Absolutely, 100%. Well, Rhiannon, it's been such a pleasure, and please share your website as well, where people can find out more. And like always, I will have everything to all your social medias and everything linked on my website as well.
Fantastic. It's consciouscoaching.coach and Facebook Conscious Coaching Collective Rhiannon Reese. And obviously I'm in LinkedIn as well. So love to have you come and visit me there. And I'm sure, Karen, we could organise a free copy of my best-selling book, How to Climb Mount Everest in Sandals. I can send you a link to share with your listeners.
Yeah, that would be incredible. I'd love to have a read of that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much. And I look forward to, keep in touch. Let me know how you get on with your new method of taking the foot off the gas a little. And I just wish you continued success and love and peace and serenity and kindness in your life.
And thank you so much. And right back to you too. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I can see that we're on a similar path in how we see the world as well. So keep doing great things as well. And really have enjoyed our time together.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notified every time a new show is released. Get more information on this week's guest as well on my website, www.soulpowerlight.com.